If you guys have a picture in your desk and there's two of you, that's fine. If you don't have a picture at your desk, try to go to the desk that has one, or grab a picture off the desk or something. These are the lower jawbone of a deer. As I'm going through the speech, just kind of look at this picture, and I'm going to go through the different age groups and want you guys to see if you guys can figure out what the age of the actual deer is by looking at that picture and by the characteristics that I'll be going over to look at. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And at the end, I'll ask you what you think your age of the deer is in that picture that you have, and I'll tell you whether you're correct or not, and I'll tell you why. Well, my name is Brandon Penny. I went to Hayersville Elementary and Middle School. I transferred from there and went to Western Brown High School for 2 years. After those 2 years, I transferred here to Southern Hills, where I studied automotive technologies, like a few of you in here. After graduating high school, I transferred to Hocking College, where I'm now majoring in wildlife management and natural resources management. Can any of you in here tell me how many teeth an actual adult white-tailed deer has in its entire mouth? More than that. More than that. 32. Well, an adult white-tailed deer will have a total of 32 teeth in its entire mouth. That's counting premolars, molars, incisors, and canines on the top and bottom. I'd like to talk to you guys about how to properly age a white-tailed deer, whether it's an adult or a fawn. And there's actually two techniques to doing this. One being using the rear hip bone, and using that technique you can get the age of that deer, and you can get the sex of the deer by using the rear hip bone. The technique I'll be talking to you guys today about is using the lower jawbone. But before you can actually do that, you need to be able to identify the different parts of the actual deer's jawbone, lower jawbone. First, you need to be able to identify the actual jawbone itself, or also known as the mandible, which is this part here, the actual jaw. Then you need to be able to identify the actual teeth. And on a fawn, you'll have what is called the milk teeth, or we call them baby teeth. In an adult, you'll have your permanent teeth, which you have premolars, which will be your P1, P2, and P3. Then you have your actual molars, which will be your M1, M2, and M3. Then you need to be able to identify the different parts of the actual tooth itself. You need to be able to identify the lingual crest, which is the high point on the jaw that you guys have on the picture on your desk. Be the high points in the back. You need to be able to identify the back cusp on the third molar, which I'll point out here in a few. Also right here. You need to be able to identify the enamel, which is the white on the tooth, on each individual tooth. You need to be able to identify the dentine, which is the brown on the top of the tooth, in between the enamel. And you need to be able to identify the infundibulum, which is in between the two, the cusps on each tooth. Okay, the easiest jaw to actually identify is the fawn, or 6-month-old jaw. And the reason that this is because they're usually only going to have 4 teeth. You have your P1, P2, P3, and your first molar on the actual fawn's jaw. Now, I personally find a 1.5-year-old deer to be the hardest age, because you can have 2 actual versions of this jaw. one version you guys see on the screen, and the other version some of you will have on your desk. The version you see on your screen will have its permanent, first two premolars will be the permanent molars. The third premolar, or the third premolar, P3, is still a milk tooth, and that's a 3-part tooth. You have 3 cusps on it. The second version you can see of this, you'll have a 2-part tooth where that third premolar is, and it'll be really white because it's a new tooth that just came in. Also, the lingual crest right here, the high points on the inside of the jaw, will be really sharp on all of the molars, on all 3 molars. The 2.5-year-old jawbone, you'll have all your teeth will be permanent teeth at this point in time. You'll see the third premolar is now a 2-part tooth, just like in the second stage of the 1.5-year-old jawbone. But the difference you'll see in this jawbone compared to the 1.5-year jawbone is you're going to have to start to have stained. Their third premolar is going to be stained. You're going to have discoloration on that tooth. And the lingual crest on your first molar will start to be worn. It won't be as sharp. On the 3.5-year-old, you're going to see more discoloration on your teeth. They're all still going to be permanent teeth. You're going to see more wear on the first molar. Then you'll start the second molar will start to be more blunt rather than sharp. Your dentine will actually become wider than the actual enamel is tall on the lingual crest. On your 4.5-year-old, still permanent teeth. It's not all of them are still permanent. Your first molar is going to be pretty well flat, or you ain't going to have much of a lingual crest at this point. Your dentine will be almost twice as wide as the enamel is tall. You'll start to see more wear. Your first molar will be almost more flat. Your second molar will be more to where you can barely see the lingual crest. And your third, you'll start to see that your third molar is going to be more blunt on it. The dentine on the lingual crest of M1 and M2 is twice as wide still, twice as wide as the enamel is tall. Now, this is kind of tricky because my actual education, this jawbone ring that I have is used for educational purposes, and it's based on ODNR's Division of Wildlife's jaw ring, and they stop at 4.5 plus. The reason they do that is because after 4.5, the deer really just depends on what the deer is eating at that point in time to know as to what the teeth are going to look like. Because a deer that's eating hay or straw or timothy or anything like that, or clovers, its teeth ain't going to be as worn as a deer that's eating acorns or hard mast. Because the deer that's eating hard mast is going to be more susceptible to its teeth chipping and being more worn down than the actual deer eating soft mast. At this point, you're going to see that your the lingual order M1, M2, and M3 are going to be heavily worn. Your P1, P2, and P3 will also be heavily worn. The actual the back cuffs back here on your third molar will be almost at a 45-degree angle towards the outside of the deer's mouth, which is actually the side that's facing you guys in your pictures. And your dentine on your M1, M2, and 3 is still going to be twice as wide as the enamel. I'd like to thank you all for listening to what I have to say today. I'd also like to thank Ms. Presser for allowing me to come in and talk to you guys. Can anybody tell me how many teeth a white-tailed deer has in its mouth?
32.
Precisely. Exactly. How many of you think you could actually do it? Aged deer. 2 months.